نبدأ في اليوتيوب عشان نشوف كيف نعملوا ولا تعطيني هوت سبوت هنا ممكن؟ شوف النقطة الساخنة. ايوه عشان تكمل. كلهم راحت علي. إلنا 500 سنة شغالين في الدكتوراه. آخر أول مرة نعطي حدا من العالم العربي. فصل فصلين. مظبوط؟ Hereby I open this academic ceremony at Maastricht University. My name is Ton de Goey. I'm the pro-rector of the ceremony and chair of the degree committee. First of all, I would like to welcome Mrs. Hanan Alburno. She will defend in public her academic thesis, which is entitled eHealth Intervention to Optimize Adherence in Late Adolescents and Young Adults with Type 1 Diabetes. Content development and preparing adoption. Welcome to all members of the degree committee, and in particular I would like to welcome the three promoters sitting opposite to me. Professor Hein de Vries, he is Professor of Health Communication at Maastricht University. Dr. Francine Schneider, she is Assistant Professor of Health Promotion also at Maastricht University. And Dr. Lisbeth Merken, she is Associate Professor of Social Networks and Health at the Open University of the Netherlands. I will introduce the 6 opponents later during the ceremony, because naming all those names makes no sense at the moment. I'll do that later. Welcome to the audience here in the aula, and also welcome to all followers of the live stream. Mrs. Alburno, may I invite you to present a summary of your thesis, and I wish you success in the coming hour. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Dear protector, dear members of the Corona, dear supervisors, my dear family, friends, and audience, thank you for attending the open defense of my dissertation entitled eHealth Intervention to Optimize Adherence in Late Adolescents and Young Adults with Type 1 Diabetes. Content development and preparing adoption. I will start with a brief background. So why type 1 diabetes? Type 1 diabetes is a public health problem, particularly among adolescents and young adults, for several reasons. More and more adolescents and young adults, which I will refer to as AYAs, have type 1 diabetes in Qatar. And this imposes a significant burden on AYAs, their families, the healthcare system, and the country because of the significant acute and chronic complications associated with type 1 diabetes if it is left unmanaged. It also costs Qatar a lot of money to deal with diabetes and its complications. So, to manage type 1 diabetes and for good diabetes outcomes, it is important that AYAs adhere to diabetes self-management behaviors. But what are these behaviors? They need to follow healthy eating habits, engage in regular physical activity, administer insulin, and monitor glucose levels, among other behaviors. However, adherence to these diabetes self-management behaviors is suboptimal which can lead to increase the risk of high blood glucose levels and increase the risk of complications. So, in order to improve adherence to diabetes self-management behaviors, there is a need for diabetes self-management education and support intervention. An online intervention might be a promising solution to be used in this group. We know from previous research that online interventions have been used and they have increased the engagement of AYAs with their treatment, and they promoted more personalized diabetes self-management plan. However, at this point, we don't have such intervention in Qatar. So it is important to inform the development of online interventions in the Arab region. And this brings me to the aims of my dissertation, and they are: the first aim was to explore what should be the content of the online intervention, and this will be the first part of my talk. The second aim was to provide insight into adoption of such intervention in clinical practice, and this will be the second part of my talk. So let me start with the first part of my talk. To explore the core content of the intervention, we focused on what factors that influence adherence should be addressed in the intervention. To answer this question, we talked to the AYAs themselves and we looked at the literature. We used the integrated change model, the I-change model, as the theoretical background for our research. When we talked to AYAs, we noticed that the following aspects need to be considered in the intervention. There were gaps in more than one aspect. For example, there were gaps in some aspects of knowledge like carbohydrate counting and managing insulin around physical activity, which highlight the need that the interventions should include learning modules that provide AYAs with the knowledge they need to manage their diabetes. Also, we noticed that there were some gaps in their actions and the levels and the interpretations of the levels of blood glucose levels and the need to change their behaviors, which highlight again the need that we need to increase the awareness of actions in the intervention, using the intervention. Additionally, we noticed that there were gaps in the awareness of risk of getting diabetes complications and the severity of these complications due to suboptimal adherence. For example, AYAs, they neglected to take insulin or to measure blood glucose levels and forgetting about the long-term complications of diabetes in favor of hanging out of their friends or because they feared the short-term complications. Further, we observed that the following elements should be included in the intervention to motivate AYAs to adhere. We need to discuss the advantages of adhering to these diabetes self-management behaviors, as well as to discuss the disadvantages in order to avoid any barriers. Also, AYAs reported that getting enough support from their families, their peers, and the healthcare providers have encouraged them to adhere, while getting inadequate support have affected their adherence negatively. So it is important that the intervention include elements that offer social support to AYAs. Also, AYAs reported that there were times when it was difficult for them to adhere, such as when they were during holidays or around their friends or when they were outside the homes. Again, therefore, it is important to encourage their confidence in being able to perform these tasks even in difficult situations. When it comes to the plans to initiate the behaviors and the plans to cope with difficult situations, we noticed that these plans were almost lacking among AYAs. So it is important that to teach IAs how to write action plans as well as coping plans to deal with the difficult situations when carrying out diabetes self-management behaviors. When we asked the IAs about their sources of information and how they find this information, they reported that the healthcare providers are the primary source of information, following by searching the internet, general websites on the internet. And however, they wanted this information to be updated and more relevant to their daily activities. Regarding the past studies, we did not find much information because of the not optimal quality of the studies. Now, let me move to the second part of my dissertation, which is to provide insight into the adoption of such intervention in clinical practice. And I mean that the adoption of the intervention by healthcare providers and the organization. And by the organization, I mean the primary healthcare centers and hospitals. For that, we spoke to the experts in the field, and we asked them about 4 main things. First, we asked them about the types of information to be included in the intervention, about their perceptions of the advantages and disadvantages of the intervention compared to current clinical practice, and we asked them what we should do in order to promote adoption of such intervention in clinical settings. Regarding the information types, we asked them about what information should the intervention provide to IAs, what types of patient data we should collect from the IAs, and how we should present this information. We also asked them about any additional services that should be provided by the intervention. Regarding the types of information to be included in the intervention, experts agreed that the 3 types of information to be included in the intervention. And these are general knowledge, such as side effects of insulin, the levels of glycemic and non-glycemic goals. And secondly, we need to include skill-improving knowledge, such as techniques, how to administer insulin, and behavioral knowledge, such as strategies to increase adherence to their diabetes self-management behaviors and strategies to deal with hypoglycemia. For the types of information to be collected from IAs, experts agreed that we need to collect information on diabetes self-management behaviors, such as the level of their physical activity and their eating patterns, in order to allow for remote monitoring of these behaviors for in-between clinical visits. When we asked them how we should present this information, experts agreed that the intervention should include elements of interactivity with the online intervention itself, with the healthcare providers, and with their peers with type 1 diabetes in order to share information and share experience. For the additional services to be included in the intervention, experts agreed that the intervention should include online behavioral counseling, voice-activated frequently asked questions, storytelling either live or recorded, as well as online social groups. When it comes to the advantages and disadvantages of the intervention compared to the current clinical practice, experts reported more advantages than disadvantages. And the advantages included examples such as providing real-time information, increasing engagement of IAs with their treatment, and the consultations will be more efficient because it will be better prepared. However, they had concerns regarding loss of communication due to technical problems and leakage of data. When we asked the experts what we need to do to promote the clinical adoption by healthcare providers, they indicated that should be at 3 levels: at the technology level, at the end user level, and at the organization level. At the technology level, experts indicated that, for example, that the interface of the intervention should be simple and easy, and it should provide support aids that help healthcare providers in the decisions they need to make. Also, it should be integrated and to fit in other systems that the healthcare provider use, and should provide easy access to patients' records. At the end-user level, experts agreed that providing training and focus and discussion groups, as well as mini pilot of the intervention, would help as well healthcare providers to adopt such intervention. Furthermore, at the organizational level, the experts agreed that promoting innovation culture and marketing the benefits would promote adoption. Now, when we asked the experts what we need to do to promote clinical adoption by the organization, they agreed that we should adopt a phased adoption roadmap. We should target many teams in the hospital or the primary healthcare centers, including the admin team, and particularly involving the leaders to act as advocate for the adoption of the eHealth intervention, as well as to promote the utility of the intervention through research and cost effectiveness. So summing up the conclusions from my research, we conclude that the online intervention has the potential to promote adherence to diabetes self-management behaviors in AYAs, provided that it includes the factors identified from our research. We also conclude that comprehensive adoption strategy plan which target the intervention, the end users, and the organization, as well as the adoption plan itself, should promote adoption. Now, summing up the recommendations from our research, we recommend first to maximize acceptability and usability. We first recommend testing the intervention using a specific prototype. Also, investigating AYA's views on the online intervention to support their adherence. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your clear summary of your thesis. The opposition will be opened by Professor Stef Kremers. He is Professor of Health Promotion at Maastricht University, and he is also Secretary of this committee. Professor Kremers.
Thank you very much. Dear candidate, let me start by congratulating you on the great work you've achieved and the very clear presentation you gave about it. I think it's very good preparatory work to generate impact in the end. So I think you have provided a very good and sound basis for that. And you've shown to be able to execute empirical research, but also a systematic review. And I think you did it on a very relevant topic in an area, a geographical area, where there are only very few studies executed in this area. So this makes it even more worth and even more important to do research in, that you have done. But I also have some questions for you. And my first question actually regards the age of your target population. You refer to them as AYAs. So you chose the 17 to 24 age category. And I actually missed the rationale for this particular age group. You could have, I think, given very good reasons for choosing a younger target population, but maybe there are also very good reasons for having an older target population. So why actually the choice for the 17 to 24 years?
Okay. Thank you, highly esteemed opponent, for your compliment and for your question. Regarding the age group, for the rationale for using this age group, actually, we know that AYAs, they have more suboptimal adherence compared to other age groups, either the children or the older age. And we wanted, when we wanted to select the age group, actually we looked at the literature to define, what age group includes AYAs. Actually, there is no standard definition for adolescents and young adults. So in our research, we try to follow the National Institute of Health, which specifies the age of young adults to start from 18 to 24. So that's why we included our age group from 18 to 24.
Yeah. Okay, maybe, sorry to interrupt, but so they do worse compared to other age groups, and of course there are reasons for that, and you've studied that, and those reasons might lie at a younger age. So why not put emphasis on the younger age groups rather than the groups where the problems have already arisen?
Okay. The main reason is that, thank you for your follow-up question. The main reason that there are some research done in the pediatrics and in the smaller age groups. However, as they transition, particularly this age group, as they transition to adult care, they face many challenges. For example, the interaction with their environment and the interaction with their social environment as well change. And as well because they assume more responsibilities toward diabetes self-management behaviors. Okay, unlike pediatrics, which could be guided by their parents. And there's as well, as our systematic review has revealed, there is limited research in this age group. This age group has received less attention in the studies. Okay, and there are as well some studies which, why we included the age 17, because there are some studies in which the parents and the patients, they prefer that the transition to the adult care to start from the age of 17.
Okay, very clear. Thank you. My follow-up question regards stigma, diabetes-related stigma. You refer to stigma in one of your propositions, in the fifth proposition. But actually in the book itself, it doesn't get attention or too much attention. I might have missed it, so maybe help me there. But I know that this is a relevant topic in the area of diabetes in the region, because people might think that any kind of chronic disease is self-inflicted, more or less, or somehow you call it upon you, which might lead to certain types of stigma. And actually, broadly speaking, there are two types of stigma. One is self-stigma, where people do it to themselves, and there's public stigma. And I'm going to give you a choice. So you propose to have a very multi-component type of approach to tackle the issues, but you can imagine that interventions aimed at self-stigma, for example regarding resilience, might have you might need another approach than when you would engage in trying to prevent public stigma, in which the whole society should be included. So where do you think now, based on your research, where do you think we are most in need in Qatar? Is it a focus on the individual or is it a focus on the society?
Thank you for your follow-up question. Actually, I think both are important.
I know, but I gave you a choice.
However, when we talk to the IS themselves, they discussed stigma which is related to the public stigma. And for example, from the peers or the school teachers or the, even the admin people in the schools. And that's why it was brought up in the research. They reported that this stigma was related to inadequate knowledge of their peers or the school teachers about diabetes. So that's why we suggest in our intervention to incorporate and to involve other resources such as the parents and the school teachers or even the trainer in the gyms to be involved in these interventions. For example, we can, if it is online, if it is face-to-face intervention, they can be invited to some of these learning modules in order to explain to them about what is diabetes, the etiology of diabetes, the management of diabetes, and the side effects of diabetes, and as well as to provide them with communication skills how they can interact in order to provide support to ayahs.
Okay, so do I understand you correctly then? Of course, I'm totally a fan of integral approaches, and of course I agree, we need to do it all. But do I hear it correctly that actually we only have one resource, so we cannot give money to everything? So you would say the resources should be directed towards the community approach rather than individual? One word or two words?
Yeah, the community. We need as well to educate the community about diabetes in order to eliminate the stigma, and so that the ayahs with type 1 diabetes, they don't feel that they are isolated.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I give the word back to the program.
Thank you, Professor Kremers. The next opponent is not here in the aula, but she is present online, Professor Catherine Bolman, and she is professor in eHealth applications at the Open University of the Netherlands. And I would like to give the word to Professor Bolman.
Thank you very much. Dear candidates, I also first want to compliment you with your thesis. I'm impressed about your dedication and mission to improve diabetes self-management among adolescents, in which you have seriously considered the culture, sensitivity, and the digital intervention possibilities. I've also respect for your career steps and the way you have combined your PhD with your work at the ministry and your mothership. I think you have conducted a set of good studies and reported them very clearly, which made your thesis a pleasure to read. And I would also like to compliment your supervisory team with this result. So far, the compliments. I, of course, also have questions. And the first relates to your samples in the interview studies and the Delphi study. Although Qatar is very wealthy with a high standard of healthcare, my main issue is whether vulnerable subgroups, such as low-income groups or migrants, are considered, since I haven't read anything about it in your thesis. But maybe there are no vulnerable groups in Qatar with regard to diabetes. Since I'm not familiar with your country, I would first like to invite you to give some more information about the situation in your country about diabetes in vulnerable groups. For example, low-income groups, migrant groups, or urban rural areas. Can you provide me some information about this?
Thank you, esteemed opponent, for your compliment and for your question. So what I understood of from your question, that you want to provide information more about the status of Qatar in terms of if there are other groups for dealing with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah, whether there are only high educated adolescents or people are suffering from diabetes mellitus in your country, or there are also vulnerable groups in terms of low literacy, low health literacy, low digital skills, etc.
So when we did our research, we focused on this age group, ayahs, and we tried to select a homogeneous sample in terms of the Arab samples. However, regarding the interviews, because there's usually certain small sample size in the interviews. And we can't, of course, recruit everyone in the interviews. However, in interviews, it is claimed that it's not just the sample size, but it is the proliferation of this interviews and the population of the research to other groups, and whether we can ask ourselves if other groups have missed the benefit from this research or no. In Qatar, there are, of course, we have the Diabetes Qatar Association, and we have as well like ambassadors or who act as models and who can help other peers with type 1 diabetes, and by providing them a role model, and they're providing them with real examples that relate to them in managing their diabetes.
Yeah, but I saw for example, in the descriptives of your interview studies that most of the included adolescents were graduated or had secondary educational levels. But my question is whether that is a real representative sample, or are there more adolescents with lower educational levels in your country that aren't involved in your studies, but are important to address with regard to diabetes self-management?
Because, thank you for your follow-up questions. Because the age group we selected, usually they are, the school age and the graduates from schools. Regarding, if we have, illiterate or who have, lower illiteracy, actually they were not included in our study. But however, we do recommend that this to be looked into in future research, because they might have more specific needs and more, approaches to deal with them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and the same accounts actually for the Delphi study, because in that Delphi study, I saw that for example, in Appendix B, that there was less consensus on the importance of the way information is presented according to the stakeholders. And I'm wondering whether your stakeholders are enough aware on those vulnerable groups, because a vast amount of research worldwide illustrates the importance of simple and interactive information provision for hard to reach individuals. And I didn't see that back in the results of your Delphi study.
Thank you for your follow-up questions. In our Delphi study, we try to recruit experts from different fields. For example, healthcare providers, e-health professionals, and researchers, as well as experts with the social and behavioral science backgrounds. And our rationale for that is that to have a wider view about, from different experts, and this will add to the content validity of the research, because we can cover a wider range of experts to cover different aspects in the when designing or developing the intervention. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And a related question is, why didn't you involve adolescents in thinking about the design of your intervention? Because in the interview studies, you asked the adolescents about their behaviors and about diabetes self-management, but not about the kind of requirements for digital support tools.
Thank you for your follow-up questions. Actually, this was one of the recommendations that we have made. We were not able to do so within this PhD trajectory due to time and resources constraints. But we do recommend that to take this into future research, and to include the eyes, to ask them about their opinions, their preference, and their needs from such intervention, because they might have different opinions than the experts.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you very much. Considering the time, I want to give the word back to the pro-rector.
Thank you, Professor Bolman. The next opponent is Dr. Ilse Mesters. She is Associate Professor of Clinical Epidemiology at Maastricht University. Dr. Mesters.
Thank you, Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, I at first would like to compliment you with your dissertation and, of course, involve your project team with this achievement. And it looks like everybody is talking about samples today, and actually I will do as well, but now on a completely different sample. I would like to take you back to your chapter 6, your Delphi study. It's not that often that people do a Delphi study. During their project, it's quite a time-consuming endeavor, I must say. I think you will agree with me that it takes a lot of time. But the difficulty for me was, when I read your chapter, is to get some idea of the recruitment strategies and the actual sample. And then I would like to start with round 1. You explained that you have approached people in organizations, and you did a PubMed and a PsycInfo kind of search to find experts. But then I tried to think of how you did that. I mean, how did you find people in organizations? I mean, if I would call an organization, what would I ask for? And actually what I'm asking is, what are the criteria that made people eligible to participate in your study? Because, I mean, you are here now, so you can still tell me what your criteria were.
Okay. Thank you, esteemed opponent, for your compliments and your question. Regarding how we selected our experts, of course, during first, we used different approaches. The first approach, we looked at the literature using PsycInfo and different and PubMed in order to identify researchers who published on this subject, and they are the first authors who published in this subject. And for the organizations, we looked at organizations in Qatar and in the Gulf region countries, such as the academic institutes and healthcare settings, in which they have they have the practice and as well the research done in this field. So.
Okay, so that was your question.
Yeah,
people that published in that organization, and then. You said you choose in your PubMed and PsycInfo search for the first and the second author. And But maybe I'm mistaken, but isn't it the last author that it's maybe the linking pin normally in many research studies? I mean, why the first and the second and not the last one?
Yeah, because the first and the second authors, they will be the primary investigators in their research. So they are the persons who are conducting the research, and of course they might be doing this research under the professor or supervisor, but actually they have as well the field work. In addition to the expertise or the background expertise, as well as they have the field work expert.
So, if I understand you correctly, you looked for people who had the most practical information available.
Yes.
So, but then, going back to your literature search, I mean, I looked at your literature search in the other chapters, 4 and 5, I guess. Why only 2 databases? Here, I mean, you know how to conduct a literature search, but now you decide to only involve 2 databases to find experts. I thought, why not more?
Yeah.
I mean, why limit it?
Yeah, because as well, this was like an additional step for us. The primary focus was to find, experts, as I said, in the field or practical experts. That's why we aimed first to look at the experts in the organizations, either academic organizations or research institutes, and as well as we have used the snowballing method of recruiting other experts. So. We choose these two mainly databases because most of the research which is related to the social aspects or social behavior, it is published in PsycInfo. So we tried not to miss any publications as well.
Yeah. Then maybe on a slightly different issue, if I look at the people who responded, actually your second round didn't add many new people. I have the impression when I read it, your initial 46 actually also were involved in the second round, and the whole literature search didn't add so many experts in the end. And finally, your last 34 people were also part of the original. So could we conclude that this whole literature search in between for round 2 wasn't that successful in finding additional experts?
And actually, I think this is not just in Qatar, but as well elsewhere. Finding the people to recruit in the research is very difficult, and it is a very well-known problem. Yeah. So, especially with the experts that they have, or the healthcare providers, or they have other responsibilities. So we try to maximize our sample by increasing the iteration rate to 50% with the experts. And in addition, we have used, alternative methods such as, we use the first reminder and the second reminders, and as well as office visits to the. So, I believe, we tried our best in order to recruit as many as experts. But, at the end, comparing to other research who used Delphi studies, our sample is comparable to other research. So.
But do you have any advices for people who would like to do this as well and see? Well, I mean, it doesn't look like you would reproduce this second round in a similar way in the next study, because it doesn't help so much to find experts, to add experts. Have you any advice?
You may give a short answer, because we are running out of time.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Do you have any advices to do it differently? So at
to
least
do different the Delphi study. I don't know. Maybe it would be option that to start with the specific groups, and to focus on healthcare professionals as a Delphi study, and to do like segmentation of the experts. It might be another option.
Okay. Thank you for your answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mesters. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Eline Smit. She is Associate Professor in Health Communication at the University of Amsterdam. Dr. Smit.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, dear candidate, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you and your team, of course, on your interesting thesis. My mom has had type 1 diabetes since she was 13, so I've seen the impact of this disease firsthand since I was a child. And, well, that personal interest combined with my interest professionally in eHealth made the thesis a very pleasure to read. So thank you for that. And I'm very curious to see what the findings will bring for diabetes management in Qatar. Of course, I also like to exchange some ideas with you, like the other people before me, because I do wonder why, after the qualitative work that you described in chapters 2 and 3, why you narrowed down the focus of the systematic review to a focus on insulin adherence only. Because to me, it feels like you're somewhat ignoring your own qualitative findings on monitoring blood glucose, diet, and physical activity. And I wonder whether it's not a missed chance. In the general introduction, you very briefly describe that, of course, the number of socio-cognitive determinants that you identified in the qualitative work was too large to continue focusing on all of the 4 behaviors. But I do want to invite you to elaborate on that decision just a bit more, and to explain why you chose to focus on insulin adherence then, and not on one of the other 4 behaviors.
Okay. Thank you, esteemed opponent, for your compliment and for your question. Actually, the decision to decide on a single behavior or a cluster of behaviors, and this is an important decision to decide on when designing interventions. And there are, I believe that there is no right or wrong way to do each, because each approach has its advantages and its disadvantages. For example, using or focusing on a single behavior, it provides the simplicity and easy to evaluate the effectiveness of the intervention. by focusing on one behavior. And but on the other hand, the disadvantages, it has limited scope, and we might have missed other behaviors that would have led to the ultimate goal. While using a cluster of, or focusing on a cluster of behaviors as well, it has its advantages and advantages. For example, the advantages of using a cluster or focusing on cluster of behaviors, it can provide the synergistic effects of these behaviors. For example, in weight reduction interventions, tracking physical activity and healthy eating, they might have synergistic or interactive effects. But at the same time, they have the disadvantages of being more complex, and they need more resources, more time. And another disadvantage is that maybe using the questions in these interventions, it might, because we will need to tackle more than one behavior. So using the questions, it might be lengthy. And this is one of the disadvantages with interventions, that the retention rate of the users drops because of the we have too lengthy questions. Yeah. So we opted to choose to focus on one behavior, which is insulin. As I said that in the thesis, due to the large number of the socio-cognitive determinants identified, so we opted to focus on one behavior, which is insulin, due to the significant effects of suboptimal adherence to insulin, in this age group.
Yeah, and I can see that, and that it's also in some part pragmatic maybe. But what I then wonder, because in the discussion of your thesis, you then elaborate on how the findings from the work that you've done may inform the development of an eHealth intervention to optimize adherence. But then I wonder, what envision you exactly here? Because I see that the findings from the qualitative research are not necessarily totally aligned with the findings from the systematic review. For instance, when it comes to awareness, it was mentioned as one of the important lacking factors in the qualitative work, but not in the systematic review. Yeah. And also this review only focused on insulin adherence. So for this eHealth intervention, what do you envision? Which findings do you think are most informative, are going to help you most? And what do you do with this multi-behavior approach? Are you going to focus on insulin adherence first and then on the other behaviors? Or what do you think? What is the best approach here?
Thank you for your follow-up questions. And I believe that there is always room for improvement. And we, as I said, regarding the large number of socio-cognitive determinants identified, we can start with focusing on one behavior, which is insulin. And then we can use the sequenced approach, behavior change approach, that once this behavior is enoughly addressed, then we can, add other behaviors in the intervention, focus on physical activity and healthy eating.
Okay, well, let's hope that we get to that point where insulin adherence is sufficiently addressed. Then I'll give the word back. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Smit. The next opponent is Professor Matti Kroone. She is professor in health promotion, prevention and community care at Maastricht University. Professor Kroone.
Thank you. Dear candidates, also for my part, congratulations for your nice thesis, and it's a really important topic. That's, at this young age, having a chronic disease is not that easy, and it has a large impact on your life. But nevertheless, I have some questions, but I will start with asking one of the paranymph to read statement 6.
Please come forward to the microphone.
To increase engagement with acceptance and adoption of eHealth interventions and consequently improve adherence to the target behavior, it is important to culturally adapt eHealth interventions for Arab adolescents and young adults with type 1 diabetes.
Thank you. First, I totally agree with this statement. That's not a problem. Yes. But then I wondered when I read your thesis, and in particular the first two chapters, chapter 2 and chapter 3, whether you actually were able to look at these cultural beliefs. You also say somewhere in your discussion that the cultural influences remain an area for future exploration. So could you provide more information on what kind of cultural beliefs you think are really important for your regarding adults and adolescents and young adults in Qatar?
Okay. Thank you, highly esteemed opponent, for your compliment and your question. Regarding the cultural beliefs, first, let me divide this answer to two parts. How we can tackle this in the intervention. That when we say that this intervention is culturally adapted, we mean that the intervention to be both culturally sensitive and relevant. So culturally sensitive, that it takes into account the culture of the Arab culture, and as well as the traditions and the norms. For example, the first thing that we can work on is the language. So offering this intervention in Arabic language, this would help for ayahs to find examples where they can relate to. And another things or other options we can think about is the family dynamics. In the Arab world, we have strong family dynamics, and the influence of family is very strong. So again, by maybe including social support component in the intervention, so we can enrich this family dynamics. The second part, which is regarding how we discuss the culture in our research, mainly this was reported from ayahs during our interviews. For example, in Qatar, has made large steps in order to improve, for example, physical activity, and they have the national sports day. But still, the weather is one aspect, and the access of people to there are many support facilities, but we need to access the extent how they use these support facilities. This needs further investigation and further research.
Okay, so then if you look, because I saw your the 20 adolescents that you interviewed, but they were also quite different, like gender, age, or they were all Qatari and non-Qatari backgrounds. So did you actually see some differences within the adolescents and young adults that you followed? So that you say, okay, that gives me some information that, for example, the awareness or maybe some motivational factors actually differ that much, that might be influenced by culture.
Okay. As I said, regarding our sample, we mainly focused on more homogeneous samples by recruiting Arab ayahs. And the reason behind that is just to minimize confounding factors, for example, in the tradition of preparing the foods. Our sample, more or less, in terms of, for example, male and females, they were almost equal. And in terms of the nationality, we had mostly Qatari ayahs, but at the same time we had, Arab ayahs from the Gulf countries and Arab worlds, which they have similar, cultural norms. So we did not, find difference in these aspects. However, we noticed that some aspects of regarding the age, for example, we find that the young adults, they were more adherent, and the late adolescents, they had suboptimal adherence. And maybe this is because of they had more cognitive skills as a young adults, or they have they are adapted more to their disease. So then, okay, that's down, yeah.
You think so? So, but then you also mentioned you already mentioned some kind of structures that you would like to change if you want to adapt it to Qatar, but these seems to be more surface structure adaptation. Do you also think about deep structure adaptation that are needed in interventions? For example, some kind of strategies are not that they don't work, for example, for adolescents in Qatar. So do you think that you need different strategies than from Dutch adolescents, for example?
In terms, different strategy in terms of what?
For example, I did, for example, a study, but that is from pregnant women, and then it seems that if you want, for example, self-monitoring, that it for some, for example, in South Africa, it's not that normal, and they say okay, they need much more information to actually be able to self-monitor. Mm-hmm. So, do you think that there also needs some adaptation in that way that you have to change the intervention so that it can also work in another context?
Yeah, thank you for your follow-up question. With this regards, I think Qatar has made tremendous improvement in terms of the diabetes care or the healthcare system in general, either through providing the secondary care or the primary care. And for example, the healthcare team include different healthcare providers, dietitians, and so they are well advanced in this term. But the focus is that the behavioral science in the country, or not just in the country, but as well using the behavioral science in diabetes is relatively new. Yeah. So I think this is the main issue, that we need to focus on the how to modify the behaviors and how to increase, the awareness about the disease and all the other, socio-cognitive determinants which were identified from this research. So, yeah.
So I think there's still work to do then.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then I will give the word back to the sector.
Thank you, Professor Krohne. The sixth and last opponent is Dr. Jessica Gubbels. She is Associate Professor in Health Promotion at Maastricht University. Dr. Gubbels.
Thank you. Dear candidate, I would also like to give you my congratulations also for your team, for the nice work. I especially appreciated the richness of how you presented the qualitative data in chapters 2 and 3 with all of those quotes. And one of them stuck really by me about a boy whose teacher called the police when he administered insulin. And it really struck me. That's something that's going to stick with me. I have some questions for you, and one of them actually picks up on a discussion you had with Professor Kremers before on the age of your target group. And I understand that they have the most suboptimal adherence in this age group, and they are transitioning into adulthood, so it's an important phase. But I wonder whether this low adherence in this group is not the result of something that happened earlier. We know that a lot of habits form at a young age, and it's more difficult to change an existing habit than to form a new one. So I would like you to readdress whether we maybe should focus on those younger children.
Okay. Thank you, esteemed opponent, for your compliment and your question. Actually, we did not include habit formation as such in our research, as I said, due to time and resources constraints. But we do look, we do recommend that this to be looked into in future research. But however, generally, habit formation is very important to be used, especially in interventions that aim to change the behavior. And I could recommend that this to be looked into in future research, for example, by tackling the behaviors, the behavioral patterns and recurrence, and linking them to the cues in the environment around the areas. And there are different approaches that we could do this. For example, we could tackle past behavior. We could use multiple surveys at different times in a time. Other options that could be used, we could use the artificial intelligence maybe, or machine learning in order to model the behaviors in order to predict future behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you would advise to look into those habits in future research. Yeah.
Yes.
How does that fit with the theoretical model that you chose to do your project in? So you chose the I change model. How
Yeah.
do you see habits fitting into that, and do you think that's the appropriate place for habits in a model?
Actually, thank you for your follow-up question. And the reason for using the I change model, because this model is a comprehensive model, and it considers as well 3 phases of change: the awareness phase, the motivational phase, and the action phase. And the most important thing that this model, as I said, that it's a phased model, and we can measure the behaviors as well a long time. So I think, because it's considered the time elements in this model, so it is, we can predict the behaviors, especially if, for example, if we collected longitudinal data, as I said, that if we use the surveys at multiple points, so yeah, it can fit to include, which is, maybe unlike other models which consider the behaviors as static rather than dynamic, and it's changing with time.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. And I was wondering, I saw in a lot of the quotes and in a lot of chapters that parents play a very important role for these adolescents and young adults. They do the groceries, they do the cooking, they support them, encourage them. So I was wondering, are we missing the parental perspective maybe in your work? Would you have liked to also include them, and in which way?
Yeah, thank you for your follow-up questions. Yeah, of course, as I said, that due to limited resources, we focus only, because this is the first time that such research has been done in the Qatar, and so our main focus was on ayahs in the interviews, but we really would like as well to include other stakeholders, particularly the parents, because they, as I said, the family dynamics in Qatar is very strong. So yeah, it would, I would advise that to include the parents as well in further research.
Mm-hmm. And in what way would you do that? What kind of study would be most suitable, you think, for getting their perspectives?
We can use mixed method approach, but mainly, first we can use like focus groups or qualitative type of studies, either through semi-structured interviews or focus groups, and as well as we can use as well surveys, or questionnaire, because this will provide more comprehensive view and will add to the quality of the study.
Mm-hmm. And do you advise to look mostly at the mother's or father's perspective, or both maybe?
Both.
Both?
Yeah, both. But, and maybe some of the students says that the mothers, they are more involved in their treatment, but we can include both.
Mrs. Alburno, as you've seen and heard, the time for defending your thesis has passed. The committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and in particular the quality of your defense. And please await our return with the results of our deliberation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, please.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Long road to the south side, 7 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. I know what's on the line. I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time, 'cause 'cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side, no place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and not. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. The mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. Even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you've won the battle once you've grown. South side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side, no place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and not. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side, no place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and not. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. 'Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Because he said that the screen is changing, they will come.
Last minutes.
احمل التاب عشان لما يطلع بالطريقة يكون مبين.
Mrs. Alburno. The degree committee here present has discussed the quality of your thesis and in particular the quality of your defense. And in view of its positive verdict and also taking into account the previous qualifications that you have attained, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. And Professor de Vries is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom and law. I invite now your supervisor to take the floor. Professor de Vries.
Dear Hanan, first I start with a question with my terrible voice. The question is, which we always ask to people who are getting this degree, do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent and responsible?
Yes, I promise.
Thank you. Then, by the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Hanan Alburno, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. And as evidence of this, I now present you with the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the other members of the committee, and fixed with the official seal of the university. Yes, I will give the word to Francine, but I want to thank you for our collaboration. We met, I think, the first time during the Sum University, and I really liked the work that you did. And, well, because of my voice, I won't say much either, but Francine will do the laudatio.
That's an honor. Thank you very much. Dear Hanan, dear Dr. Alburno, how does it feel?
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will be talking on behalf of the team. And I have some words for you. You have embarked on this PhD journey at the end of 2016. That year you visited us here in Maastricht for the yearly summer course that Hein was hosting. And there I think the seed for your PhD trajectory was planted. And the first step you had to take was to write a research proposal. And in this first phase, I think we already saw your determination, your passion, and your intrinsic motivation for this specific topic and for this specific target group. And these traits, determination, passion, and intrinsic motivation, were of very high value during all phases of this project. And I would like to take these traits and reflect on the different phases, how they came in handy. First of all, I think in the beginning phase, when you were still drafting the proposal, you were so ambitious, sometimes even too ambitious. And it was a challenge, I think, for us as a team to convince you that it is really not possible to do all these studies first to inform the development, to inform the adoption, to develop, to pilot test, to pre-test, to implement, to evaluate. You even wanted to do cost-effectiveness studies, all in one PhD project. And especially in a context where you were operating, where information was still lacking. And I think we spent a lot of time convincing you to do that. We provided you feedback on several occasions, and we have sent you back to the drawing table multiple times. And even though I know you must have found us annoying, you came back every time with a new, better version of the proposal. And this resulted in the official start of this trajectory that we started with you as the PhD candidate and us as your team. But not only in this proposal initial period, I think these traits were of great value. They also came in very handy when you started your first study, the interview studies. You've prepared these studies very carefully, with a lot of eye for methodological details. Developing the interview guide in accordance with the I-Change model, the broadness of the model, which was the challenge. You also made sure that everything was in line with the ethical requirements. You really took that into mind during the process. And it also should be fitted to the target group, which is also a really specific target group that you need to have the skills to communicate with. And of course, all of this was always accompanied with the generous, sometimes conflicting feedback of your team. And this in itself is really a huge challenge. I can speak from personal experience here. But here as well, I think you managed with these 3 traits that you have in your pocket. But this wasn't the biggest bump in the road when you started the interview studies, I think. After this was all nicely prepared and you were ready to start, you had to face the very challenging and time-consuming endeavor of recruiting. And then you had to spend hours and hours and hours talking to all these adolescents. And the way you have approached these interviews and the way you were able to openly talk to these young people, being curious to hear about their perspectives and always doing that in a safe space, I think that was really remarkable. So our compliments for that. And then when all the data were collected, you faced yet another challenge. You had to, where your traits like determination, passion, and intrinsic motivation were really needed. You had to process loads of qualitative data. We even had to see whether we could combine it into one article. It was really a lot. And you even had to spend a lot of time translating these data from Arabic to English, simply so that we could criticize and give feedback. That is not easy, I can imagine, but you managed again. And luckily, we then ended up in the final phase. All data were collected, all articles were written, and it was time to start writing the general introduction and a general discussion. And during this phase, I think we as a team also faced a change or a challenge. Lisbeth, making a new step in her career, going to another department and another university. Hein, making a new step in life, actually, leaving academia, on paper maybe. And all of us had to find a new way of working and a new routine. Me included, as I also struggled with this change, actually more than I expected to do. But here again, you showed determination, passion, and intrinsic motivation. Especially in the end, you clearly took control, you took the lead in the project, and you just finished it. And that has brought us here today. So at this moment, we as a team are very proud to present to everybody here and also people online, Dr. Hanan Alburno. She is very determined, she's full of passion and intrinsic motivation. And oh yeah, one important trait I didn't mention yet, she's also a little stubborn at times. But was, yes, thank you for us, it was a pleasure to be part of this project and to make this journey together. I would like to thank Hein as Lisbeth as well. It was really nice being part of this journey. And now our final job is to congratulate you. So congratulate you, Dr. Hanan. We are very proud of you. We wish you a nice day with your loved ones, with your children, your husband, family members. Be sure to make it a good one, and be sure to invest all the nice work you did when you arrived back in Qatar. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Esteemed Dr. Alburno, dear Hanan, it's my great pleasure, if you are back here, it's my great pleasure to congratulate you with your doctorate and the honor that you have acquired today. And I congratulate you also on behalf of Maastricht University. And I would like to share some impressions of the committee with you. Well, first of all, I think you have given a very clear summary of your thesis, which was not only clear to the committee, but I hope and I think also for the audience here and the audience in the live stream. And we have seen a dissertation of good quality, and with your defense, we think that you have shown to be knowledgeable of the scientific background and basis of your studies. But we also would have liked to discuss some more in detail and more elaborately on a number of aspects of your thesis. But unfortunately, we had not more time. And maybe we have seen that you did not understand all the questions within every detail. Yeah. But we consider that as not a serious problem, and we think that you have very sufficiently chosen that you have knowledgeable of the scientific basis. I would like to congratulate not only you, but also your three supervisors, Professor Hein de Vries, Dr. Francine Schneider, and Dr. Lisbeth Merken. Congratulations with the results that we have seen in the form of a good thesis, of a good defense, and also with a very clear summary of the complete thesis, which looks beautiful, your thesis. So congratulations with these results. And I would like to thank the members, all the members of the assessment committee, as well as this degree committee. And I would like to thank in particular the external members of the committee for their critical reading, for having interesting questions and an interesting discussion. So thank you very much for your contributions to this committee. And of course, I would like to include in my congratulations your family, your daughter who is the paranymph, and your son and your husband and other members of the family. Congratulations with the results that we all have seen today. And I wish you a successful professional career and a happy personal life. Before I close this ceremony, I would like to invite Professor Bolman to congratulate the young doctor. The floor is yours, Professor Bolman.
Thank you. Dear Dr. Hanan Alburno, it's an honor to get one of the first opportunities to congratulate you. And herewith, I want to give you and your family my warmest congratulations. And becoming a doctor is very special. And as already is mentioned by others and by myself, you have done an excellent preparatory work to improve diabetes self-management in adolescents. Hopefully you can enjoy this special day, and I hope you will keep up the good work to improve self-management of diabetes. And also congratulations to your team, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bolman. Before I close this ceremony, I have one announcement to make. We will have, we'd like to take a picture of you in the middle and with the committee around you. And when still, Professor Bolman is still on the screen. So we make one picture here. And after that, we will make another picture in the stairs in the hall. And after that, I would like to invite everyone to come to the reception in the rafter. And the beadle will show you where that is. For now, I would like to ask you to stay here while we are making the photograph. Hereby, I close this academic ceremony.
Yeah, thank you.
Recording stopped.